are joined by another very special guest, an expert in foreign policy. This guy's got a resume a mile long. You're really going to enjoy hearing from him. Clifford May is the founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. This was created immediately following the 9/11 attacks on the U.S., and under his leadership, FDD has become one of the nation's most highly regarded policy institutes and a sought-after voice on a wide range of national security issues. He's a veteran news reporter, foreign correspondent, and editor at the New York Times and other publications, and he's currently the weekly foreign desk columnist of the Washington Times. Thank you, Clifford, for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Tim.
In this very important time, people are talking about the Iran deal, but a lot of people don't really know what the deal is. President Obama is touting it as a great deal. John Kerry came on yesterday defending the deal. Can you tell us what the deal is all about?
Well, the concept behind the deal was pretty simple. It was to prevent Iran, which is the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world. That's not by my calculation. It's by the calculations of the U.S. government, to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. It would be very dangerous for Iran to get nuclear weapons. Now the president's saying, look, that's what this deal does. We're going to stop them, at least for 10 years, maybe longer. I would argue that this agreement didn't work out, that we got out-negotiated in this case.
All right, tell us why it's a bad deal.
It's a bad deal. It's a deal that, and I don't think anybody disputes this, says, look, in 10 or 15 years, we're going to welcome you into the nuclear club. There will be no restrictions on you in that regard. And if you just kind of promise not to develop nuclear weapons, or more precisely, to continue to say, as you have in the past, that you've never been developing nuclear weapons, although we know you have been, then we're going to reward you. And what it comes down to is this, and this is the way I'm afraid you have to look at it. If on October of 2001, I had been on a radio show with you, and I said, here's my prediction, Tim. Within less than 15 years, we'll have an American president giving tens of billions of dollars and two pathways to nuclear weapons to the leading terrorist sponsor in the world, you'd say this guy is totally crazy, don't have him on the show. But I'm afraid that's what this deal does. It says to the Iranians, here's the money coming for you. If you're patient, you can become a nuclear power. We hope at that point you'll be more moderate, but that's just our hope. And if you cheat, you can probably have nuclear weapons sooner. And if they do cheat, I don't think this agreement gives us the ability to verify and prove it, or to enforce any punishment in response to that.
All right, now tell us this. For the deal to go into effect, what has to happen from here?
Actually, nothing. The controversy right now is over whether or not Congress will vote to approve or disapprove the deal. I think a majority of members of Congress probably will vote to disapprove the deal, but probably not enough to override a presidential veto. And even if there are enough to override a presidential veto, I think the president will say, I appreciate the advice, but on my executive authority, I'm going to go ahead with the deal anyway. And the Iranians will probably complain, well, we're very disappointed that the American Congress doesn't believe in this deal, but we expect America to live up to it anyway. And probably they'll say, and we're going to live up to our end of the bargain. Maybe true, maybe not. I don't think so. I don't trust them. But they will say that because there's a lot of money coming their way, and they want that money. They want the tens of billions of dollars that they have been promised as part of this deal. And then the question becomes, what are they going to do with that money? Some people say, I'm sure they're going to use it to prop up their domestic government services. I think they'll use a lot of it to support terrorism and their imperial ambitions in the Middle East.
So, Clifford, I'm a pretty simple guy, and it seems like what you said earlier, dating back to 2001, the notion of giving Iran the ability to pursue nuclear weapons in 10 years is the most ignorant, stupid decision that a president could ever make. But that's exactly what you're saying he's doing. I am. I'm saying he's kicking the can down the road. He's going to say, look, I don't want these guys developing nuclear weapons on my watch. The next president, the president after that, let those guys deal with this. It would have made sense, and I think this is one of the places where we got out-negotiated, to say, look, we'll give you all sorts of benefits, and benefits that are in this deal,
if we see your behavior changing, if we see that your conduct is different, if we see that you're becoming more moderate, if we see that you're not threatening your neighbors, that you're not sponsoring terrorism, that you're not still doing things that result in the killing of Americans, and hundreds, if not thousands of Americans have been killed because of Iran, and that's not my opinion. It's the opinion of such people as Ray Odierno, U.S. Army Chief of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But instead it says, no, we're not going to worry about your behavior. We'll do this on the basis of time. In so many years, you can get these weapons. In so many years, you can do this. In so many years, you can have more. Whether or not you change, we'll cross our fingers and hope you get more moderate. And maybe there's a theory that if you get richer, you get more moderate. I think that theory doesn't hold up. And so we end up saying, yep, just be patient, and you get everything you want, which is you'll get richer and you'll get more powerful. And we're going to say this is a good deal, and I don't think it is. I think that there were red lines that the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei, had. They were not crossed. There were red lines that President Obama had, such as that we must have anywhere, anytime inspections. All those red lines were crossed. We're not going to have anywhere, anytime inspections. We're not going to have, according to the Iranians, the ability to inspect military facilities, and it's military facilities where undeclared nuclear weapons research and development is probably taking place. Wouldn't you think so?
Absolutely. So Clifford May is with us. He's our guest, founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, an expert in all things foreign policy, terrorism, radical Islamic terrorism. And I got to ask you this. Obama's for the deal, of course. Kerry is for the deal. Hillary is for the deal. But Chuck Schumer, Democrat senator from New York, has come out against the deal. Did that surprise you?
It didn't entirely surprise me, partly because when I was a reporter 30 years ago, I covered Chuck Schumer, and I know what a smart guy he was. So I understood that from a policy perspective, he would get that this is a bad deal. From a political perspective, I didn't know whether he would have the courage to stand up and say, I'm going to call a spade a spade. I'm going to say this. I see what's wrong with this, and it is. He actually wrote a 1,600-word essay explaining his opposition to the deal. It is very thoughtful. It is very good. I have a column in this morning's Washington Times. It's online a lot of places, certainly the Washington Times, about what Chuck Schumer wrote and about his decision to oppose this deal. And it's on very much the same kinds of things you talked about. He's saying, look, this deal as it stands is not good because we don't have the ability to inspect in the way we need to, because we don't have the ability to snap back sanctions and punish if we find violations. And he's really not saying even to end the deal. He's saying, let's do this. Let's disapprove the deal and have the president go back to the Iranians and say, you know what, Congress, representing the public, doesn't think I've got a good enough deal. I got to improve it a little bit. We need some clarifications. When you say we can't go into any military sites, what does that mean exactly? Because we kind of think we need to. How about some amendments? How about some addenda? Is this, first of all, in a democratic society, getting congressional approval for such a consequential deal, we used to call it a treaty, that's been the norm for the past couple hundred years. Secondly, we've got many examples, scores of examples, of Congress doing exactly this on consequential agreements. If people who have a memory of history, Senator Scoop Jackson, a Democrat, on a number of occasions went to President Reagan and said, you're working on arms control with the Soviets. I don't think your deal is strong enough. Go back and get a better deal. And he did. So there's no reason except truculence, obstinacy, that President Obama can't say, I hear what Congress is saying. I'm going back to the Iranians, and I'm going to tell them, look, we've got to do a little better than we've done.
All right, a final question for you. Fast forward to January of 2017, and let's assume a Republican is now in the White House.
Right.
What can the president at that point and or Congress do to change this deal, get rid of this deal? What are the options?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we want to. I think it would be good and useful to have a strong bipartisan vote of disapproval. Now, it'll give leverage and latitude to the next president who can say this deal, I'm very concerned about this deal, and here's what we're going to do about it. Now, there's any number of options he can take at that point. One, he can say, I'm going to look very hard at noncompliance, and I am going to respond to noncompliance very strenuously. Understand that. That's what he can do. He can go further, and he can say, I think this deal is so bad we're going to unravel it. I would think that what he would want to do is sit down with his allies and come up with a strategy for either mending or ending the deal, but making clear that our goal is, as it has been with every administration going back for the last 36 years since the revolution in 1979, I was in Iran for that, and saying we're not going to let the leading sponsor of terrorism in the world have nuclear weapons, whatever it takes. That may take threatening new sanctions, serious crippling sanctions. It may require the credible threat of force. If the threat of force is credible, it's seldom necessary to use it. The next president may begin to fix this deal or end this deal, depending on how difficult the Iranians are to deal with.
We have been speaking with Clifford May, founder and president of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Clifford, we can't thank you enough for joining us, and I want you to tell folks about the website if they want to learn more about FDD.
DefendDemocracy.org is the website. My column will be there. It'll be a town hall, be a Washington Times, and a lot of other places, and they can read a little bit more about what Schumer is thinking, which I think is, again, I think he's thought through this pretty well.
You have been listening to Clifford May. Read his columns in the Washington Times. Hey, we can't thank you enough for joining us. Have a great week.